I had never really read the book of Anne of Green Gables. I'd had it a little bit read to us in school when we were kids, and I remember some of the comic scenes in it, but I didn't have a strong impression of it. It's more than the story of an orphan being adopted by an elderly couple. It has a darkness to it at times. It has a reality to it, and it has a profound emotional core that's very much the spirit of the author. And then it took me several more readings to get through it and to really understand it. It was a child's voice, but it was the voice of someone who had a greater sense of the world that they existed in. I think for me, reading Anne of Green Gables and understanding what Montgomery was trying to communicate within the context of the book was an aha moment, because it allowed me to go forward with the book. Prince Edward Island was soulless for Montgomery in that it enabled her to renew herself and to understand herself. It was her roots, but it also gave her a spiritual sense of who she was. That great physical sense of what Prince Edward Island was what I wanted to imbue the film with. And the greater irony was we weren't really going to be able to shoot at Prince Edward Island, so it had to be very much in my head, and it was a concept that I was working on. So I didn't really see that as a deterrent. It was just a question of picking the right locations and being able to capture within my eye and the eye of the camera what I felt was appropriate for the story. So I found that I ended up playing most of the characters in my head. I knew every moment that they entered. I knew every beat. I knew every emotional motivation for them. That made it very easy to direct everybody because there was never a false moment in my mind. Either the actor hit the moment that I saw in my head or heard in my mind, or they didn't. A great cast is defined as doing 50% of the director's job. If you've cast the actors perfectly, then 50% of your job is done. The other 50% is gaining access to them and to them intellectually. Many actors allow a director to walk into their persona, into their mind, and just muck around and collaborate with them on the role. And the cast was very much like that, particularly Dewhurst, Farnsworth, and Megan. And the joy of being able to do that is that you're in sync with them constantly. You're in sync with when they get it right, and if they're not right, you can help find that balance. My paternal grandparents were born in 1855 and 1865, so I knew their whole history, and I had a very strong sense of what living in that time period was like, so it was very easy for me to kind of capture it on screen. And I think it began my fascination with period movies, because period movies were, for me, essentially an escape into a time period that was part of my family's history. I inherited a whole body of 16mm films from the 20s up until the 50s. And they were my mother's side of the family, actually, and a history of their family. And I had transferred all those films to tape for a lot of the people who were still elderly in my family to be able to see and to tell me who was in those films. So when I was doing the series Wind at My Back, the editors and myself decided to intercut some of those family films with original footage that we were shooting of the main cast, and they both melded together perfectly in an opening sequence that you really can't tell what's been staged and what was original. I love David Lean's sense of story and his sense of spectacle. He was able to take a huge tableau and play intimate stories against them, and that is genius in my mind. I wanted to do that in a smaller way with Anne of Green Gables because I felt that it was a broad story. It had a lot of characters in it. It would be impossible to simply film each chapter of the book because it was quite anthologically written. It wasn't written as a story. So I knew from the beginning that I was going to have to try and kind of make up the story, but make an audience believe that they were watching the book.